Hi guys, my name is Ruth. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is a new week, which means fresh new content. So in my previous video, I talked about the principle of microeconomics, and I specifically talked about demand and supply. I talked about market equilibrium, and I talked about elasticity. So if you haven't watched that video, please go back and watch it, because that's the only way you can understand what I'm going to talk about today. So today I am going to talk specifically about one subject, which is also a concept of microeconomics. So today I am going to talk about maximization of utility. It's also one of the most important principle of microeconomics, and when you get to understand that point, it's going to make your life easier, because you're going to learn how to make better decisions according to the choices that you are going to have at hand. So before I go on talking about maximizing utility, I want to define utility. So what is utility? So utility is the value that is derived after consuming a good or a service. So basically, it's what you get after you use a good or a service. That is what we call utility. So talking about maximizing utility, I am going to use an example of renting a house. You know, before you rent a house, you have to know your capability of paying a house, maybe in a certain neighborhood, because you have to think about your level of income. You have to think about your budget. So you have to take into account the income and how much you are going to spend on the housing in such a way that you to maximize your utility or satisfaction. So if you allocate too much on renting, you will not have enough money for other things like clothes, maybe and food. So you have to think about what amount of money you are going to use on housing according to the income that you have, so that you don't miss out on other essential things for you to survive, something like food and clothing. So you have to think about the maximum amount of money that you are willing to part with for the rent. Then what amenities you want to put on that house. When I talk about amenities, I talk about the furniture, the electronics, everything that you want to put in your house. And another thing you have to think about is the neighborhood that you want to live in, because if you earn minimum wage, you cannot go to live in a neighborhood whereby people that live there, the ones that earn more than you. You cannot go, for example, you cannot go live in Karen, that is in Nairobi. You go to live in Karen, where those people that live there it's expensive essentially to live there. So you have to think about your own level of income before choosing an apartment to live and the neighborhood that you want to go. So all these decisions and calculation are about maximization of utility. You cannot imagine how often we use economics in our daily life. Actually, we use economics all the time, as long as we are living. For example, when you wake up in the morning, early morning, you have to have some breakfast. So before going to make that breakfast, before going to your kitchen to make some breakfast, you have to think about, what do I want to eat? Because you have to keep in mind, because in the morning you may have several choices on what you eat. You can think about eating some eggs, some bread. You can have some leftovers from last night. You can have just some tea. So before that, you have to keep you have something in mind, that when I go to my kitchen, I'm going to make tea, or when I go to my kitchen, I'm going to just to make some eggs for me to eat. So you have to have an idea of what you're going to do before even going there. Before choosing anything, something to eat, you always think about what satisfaction will I get from eating this, instead of that, and keeping in mind that you have to compare it, because different things have different prices. Keeping in mind that you compare it with how much am I going to buy this certain thing that I've chosen to eat, from the shop, the additional satisfaction that you get from choosing something, and then comparing it with how long am I going to make it, how long am I going to take to make this, instead of that, and then comparing to different breakfast choices. That is the reason as to why you'll not want to have eggs every morning. You will kind of want to change into something else, because you have reached your level of satisfaction towards eggs. The good thing about economics is that it always try to make our life simpler in every possible way. So maybe for example, at lunch you want to have some rice, or you just have to you want to have just fries. This is what economics is going to do for you. Point in time that you decide to have rice instead of fries, the end result of you eating rice, the end result of that is what is called utils. Utils just the level of satisfaction you get after you eat rice. The rice utils depend on an individual and how often that individual is going to eat a certain meal or their favorite meal, because rice can be the best choice for you, but it may not work for me. At this point in time, you have to calculate the marginal utility, which is the level of satisfaction you get from eating rice instead of fries. The first few days of eating your favorite meal, the marginal utility is high because you are eating your favorite meal. But after weeks of eating the same food over and over again, your satisfaction rate drops down, and now instead of you eating rice, you want to change into eating fries. This assuming that the price of rice and fries is the same, and since you have to factor in price, it immediately affects your decision making. For using marginal utility, you can decide what to wear, what to eat, which ride to take to work, which movie to watch at a certain point in time, which path are you going to take to walk you from maybe from school to home. In conclusion, it is very important to understand this principle of microeconomics because it is going to help you day in, day out, to make the best decision before doing or trying to do something or anything else.